Alrighty. It's March 15th. This is the blockchain team meeting. Let's go ahead and do a mainnet check-in. I think we got at least 3 PRs we're still waiting on before we can do a release, the 2.09 release. First one is the Atlas fixes. I've been taking a look at this since like Thursday and just trying it out to make sure it works. And Ludo has found and fixed 2 things since then I've seen. I just had a quick question though for Ludo about this. Are there any live attachments on Xenon? Because I noticed that when I run a Xenon node, I see attachments get registered from the BNS contract, but I don't have any of the attachments themselves.
Yeah, so I think that a few people did call the smart contract that would trigger the attachment mechanism, but I don't think that the attachments themselves have been submitted.
Okay.
So I think that we just have some like empty attachment instances on Xenon, and I don't think that we will ever get the attachment. So it's a good it's a good stress test.
Okay, that's helpful because I noticed that the hash is actually all the same for all the attachments. So
yeah,
if the empty hash, then that would make sense. I'll just go ahead and try out registering some names then.
Okay, and so I saw your issue from this weekend. I did push a fix.
I did see that. I saw it last night. I haven't tested it yet, but I will do so today.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you hopping on those. Sorry, I'm finding them by testing it instead of reading the code, because I'm sure that takes longer.
That's cool. Yeah, thanks. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, of course, like I want this to succeed. Next PR, I think I should have a fix PR. This is in draft status right now. It's 2483. It fixes microblock mining, and now have a test that almost works that lets us reliably reproduce the microblock mining overflow, or namely, it makes sure that it doesn't happen. So I hope to have that out today. It's just the test iteration takes a while because the test itself takes like half an hour to run. It's painful because it has to hit like the one of the execution cost limits. Fix 42491. That's another small PR. I think it just changes something about the block downloads to make it a little bit faster. That was tested with 2483 applied because I wanted to try it out on testnet live. There's no rush on this. We can just merge it as soon as we get 2483 merged in. I think that's, do we want to add any other PRs just so we can have a list here that we want to make for release? I think we have Jay Wiley's Prometheus PR.
Yes, I updated some changes today addressing all the comments. I just need one more approval before I can merge it.
All right. But let's shoot for getting this included in the next release then. That said, we can add to this list as we just go through the board here.
Judah, it was 2461, not 91. I think I saw you put 91 in there.
Oh, that's a separate PR. That's
oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, all good. Both of these need to be merged. Cool. So we'll have one more review on that. I'm working on this still. It's back burner whenever we have time, and there's not something more pressing. That's the POX anchor block forkability. Reed, any motion on this?
Yeah, so it seems like a lot of these concerns can be mitigated by tweaking the nodes config. There's one config parameter in particular, the POX sync sample seconds, that seems to drastically speed up the initial sync. So I think largely that kind of addresses Hank's concern here. That being said, like maybe some of this stuff should be configurable, like the reward cycle length. That would be a pretty easy change to make, I think. What else? And then, yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to address this last bullet point yet, the supporting use test genesis chain state. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone know much about that?
I think probably Matt's the best person to answer this.
Okay. All right. I'll reach out to Matt later about that. But Yeah, I'm gonna sync with Hank about this at some point, and maybe this issue can be closed.
Just one last thing. I wouldn't set this to 0, POX sync sample sex. I've set it to like 5 or something like that, or 1.
Okay. Okay.
It's fine for local. What it does, it's the window of time that the system uses to infer whether or not it's gotten all the blocks for reward
Right.
cycle.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's safe to do 0, but I'm not 100% confident.
Yeah, I should have been a bit more specific. I think 0 is only really appropriate if it's like a single miner, I think. Does that sound correct?
And single miner and single node.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's just one miner by itself, it doesn't matter. But if you want another node syncing with it, you're going to want to make.
Okay, I'll adjust that comment then, just to say like making this number lower should help.
Yeah, I mean, zero should work. I think 0 is like treated as a special case where like it never even invokes the
watchdog.
The watchdog. So yeah, I think 0 should work.
Okay. Just as long as if you have 2 nodes, you can verify this is working, but by making sure that they have the same POX bit vectors, it'll get logged by both of them in the debug log.
Okay.
You'll definitely notice if they're not in sync because they'll have different V2 infos.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
And then let's see. Yeah, this refactor, I haven't really had much of a chance to look at this past week. It's starting to feel to me like this is, I don't know, like this was kind of mentioned in like our hero planning doc as something that like people might be interested in. And like, I think, I don't know, I think maybe a little bit more planning and thought should go into kind of like how exactly this refactor should happen. Yeah, it's just like a lot of work and there's like a lot of just like small decisions that need to be made about like where things should go and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, I don't always feel super well equipped to make those decisions, I guess. Yeah, it's coming slow.
There's definitely a lot of technical debt there. When we were racing towards the finish line for release, we weren't too concerned about how coupled it got to the chain state system. We're paying for that now, fortunately. I guess maybe one question to ask here would be like, what is gained by decoupling it? Because reason I ask is that the language feature set, like the set of language functions that are built in or the types that are built in, the Stacks blockchain is dependent on a very specific set of those existing and the rest of them not existing. Like you can't just add a new keyword, for example. Would decoupling the VM put us at risk of accidentally changing that VM? Or is that not really a concern because we can just pin a particular version to it into the Stacks blockchain? I guess I'm trying to figure out who the downstream this will be.
Yeah, so I think that what we would do is just like either pin it to a version or like, I mean, even in decoupling, like it might still end up in the same Git repo, just as another crate output or something. One of the benefits of decoupling is, well, there's many benefits of decoupling, but they're all related, I think, to tooling. Like you could imagine like web tooling and stuff for Clarity that actually embeds the VM in JavaScript.
Yeah, that's kind of the main thing that I would look forward to seeing as well. Like I was thinking a lot about the REPL like a month or two back, and it's kind of difficult to like actually iterate on the REPL right now. Just because it can't like directly depend on the VM. It kind of has to be like, you know, excised out of the code base into the REPL's code base.
Yeah, that makes sense. Having artifacts that let you have standalone VMs for the purpose of developing Stacks blockchain contracts is super useful. Okay, but this is going to be like something that Hero takes care of, I guess. Like it'll be a separate planning doc, a separate project, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm happy to keep working on this. It's just, yeah, I feel like I could use a little bit of help just with like some of the decisions that need to be made here. And yeah, currently I'm still focusing on, I'm still focusing on like some of the like protocol, the message protocol stuff, trying to like excise that. That seemed like after our last conversation about this, that seemed like a good place to start. And yeah, I'm getting close with that. There's like a few things I'm trying to detangle that I probably need to consult Aaron about, but.
Alrighty. Yeah, so this is just a long-term thing. Maybe there could be like a set of milestones for it or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
it definitely needs to be broken down.
Sounds good. Mempool transactions should be evaluated in nonce order, not walk order. Is this something that's going to be addressed this week? I see it got assigned to the rethrow.
Yeah, I think this is something I'll be working on this week.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Yeah, it's definitely a huge problem with mining right now. It's hard to chain transactions. I think we're missing a bunch of things here. Let me just go to our PR list so we can at least go through those. We got a ton of PRs merged last week. Great job, everyone. I mentioned these two already. I'm not sure whether or not this PR will get merged or the other PR, or maybe we can just merge them together, Aaron, the 2483 PR.
Yeah, I'm happy to close this one. I think that the only comment, I guess there's some cleanup here that we should just do in general. There's like some unnecessary clones that removed. I think the only big difference between this PR and your PR is in mine, we keep around, or we actually delete the orphaned microblocks or like move them to an invalidated table.
Right.
And I know that setting orphaned equals 1 should have the same impact.
That's the case.
Yeah, I really worry about there being some code path somewhere that is doing a select without checking the orphan bit.
Okay. I mean, it's not that these things aren't going to be so huge data-wise that it's going to be a problem. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want, like, can you rebase this off of?
Sure.
Or I can do it either way. So that way, at least it gets merged into the 2483 branch, which already tries to do this.
Yeah, sure. Just leave a comment and I'll rebase this off 2483.
Sounds good. Well, it's 2502 is the PR, but it's the fix for 2483. Thanks, Aaron. Just talked about this one. Matt, do you want to give us a bit of an update on the support for the new M1 chipset? I think is what this is.
Yeah, I took a look at the cross-compiling tool that it's using, and it hasn't been updated since I made this PR.
Okay.
So just kind of stuck in limbo until that updates or until someone publishes like some kind of blog or article about how to do this. There could easily be some like environmental variables set incorrectly, but there's so much like stuff happening behind the scenes, so that I'm not familiar enough with C build stuff to get this to work right.
Yeah, it's always a fun little adventure to add new hardware support for any language.
Yeah, it's pretty absurd. Like there's like Rust C and like the C, like I can't remember what it's called in Rust, but like the ability to like embed C. There's environmental variables for like all that stuff. There's probably like 15 of them, and they all have to point to the right tooling. So I don't know. It works like cross compiling for normal Mac 64-bit, but not ARM.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we just have to wait until this gets merged. This right here.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Sounds good. We just talked about Atlas fixes. I think that's the end of it. We can't really do much with this one here. Cool. Same with the Atlas fixes here. We just talked about these. Let's go through the new issues. I think I replied to this one here. I think we have a documentation bug about the use of concat with fold. can't do it because it's a special function. It doesn't emit a output that has the same type as its inputs, is my understanding. Aaron, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so I guess, do we maintain the documentation? Is that something in the blockchain repo?
Yes, so it's in the VM docs. What we should do, yeah, we should also update the automatic testing that it does, because like these examples actually get run, and this is an example of something that gets rejected by the static analysis, not by the interpreter.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So this is actually a bug in the doc test system.
Yep.
Yep. TOML config parsing improvements. And do you want to talk a bit more about this, Charlie?
Yeah, sure. So I was helping a vendor set up their API and follower, and we kind of ran into this issue that was just kind of confusing. They had quotation marks around their RPC and peer ports, and it just took us a while to figure out what the hangup was, because it would crash immediately on startup, and it doesn't point to the problem being the config file, nor does it point to where the problem is in the config file. So I just feel like there could be some robustness introduced into the config in general. So like if a numeric property like the port is given as a string, the parsing logic should try to convert it to an integer before failing. And also just logging and the stack trace in general should be a bit more descriptive, or point out where in the config file the problem may be.
Yeah, no question, no doubt there. I know that our config parsing logic kind of does a lot of unwrapping. And I'm guessing that that's probably why we just get an error saying it happens in the config file as opposed to like where in the config file.
It doesn't even say that it's the config file though. So you could have like a parsing logic, but it won't make itself apparent in the stack trace or the log output.
Yeah,
I mean, it kind of says that it's coming in the config logic though in the stack trace. But yeah, Charlie's comment is correct. I dealt with this many times myself. You know, we just know what to look for when we see those at this point, versus someone who's just starting it out for the first time, you know, may be very confused when they see these messages.
Yeah, it's not very self-service, is it?
Yeah, so I think I looked into it, and I think that the backtrace crate that we are using for like hooking up the panic handler is shadowing the expect message.
Yes, it is. I'm not sure why, but it's just an issue. Maybe we could install the handler after we do config parsing or something like that as a temporary workaround.
Does the TOML library we're using not have like a schema check type behavior?
I'm not sure. We can check.
Yeah, because like a lot of things that take TOMLs, like if they input it and you give it something wrong, like they have like a pretty output that like prints your TOML file and puts like an arrow next to the line that's wrong. That's like, in my mind, that would be like the gold standard for solving.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's nothing kind of surprising here. Like we know the parsing is brittle and tons of room for improvement. So I would say, Charlie, the DevOps team, Alex, like, whatever you're hearing from people who are running into this, we have seen a ton of reports on Discord as well. Let's collect like some requirements or like tangible improvements that we want to make to this process. Then, this is an imminently fixable issue that has no kind of blockers on anything. So we should just figure out a way to make progress on it.
Who wants to take the issue?
One thing to add here, if we're going to be looking at the configuration file stuff, I filed an issue a while back about possibly adding some variable expansion to it. If that's something we can add in, I'd really appreciate it. Something where you could create a environment variable, port is, 28443, and then put port as a variable in the configuration file.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's something that TOML itself does, or if that's something that you would just need to use like a templating system to do.
I'm not sure. I mean, I tried it. Obviously, it failed. So I don't think that TOML itself can do it by default.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing how this would work without having some sort of shell evaluation code in the crate, because that's basically what would have to happen. You have to look into the environs. You'd have to go expand them, possibly run some shell script that's embedded inside of it. I'm not sure.
Okay. I mean, if it can happen, it would be awesome. If not, oh well.
Well, we do have a separate issue for that, Joelle. So I don't think we should try and combine all of these things into like a
Oh, no,
single.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
I filed the issue a while back. I
Yeah.
was just saying, if they're looking at the configuration file stuff, it might be useful to take a look and see if that's possible or not.
Yeah. There's like other config-related cleanup. We have historical issues as well. I think there was another one where right now, like for some things, we accept like a host port combination. For other things, we accept separate host and separate port. And that was like limiting in our ability to like configure things like topology in a certain way. So I think there's just like a general bucket of improvements around config file parsing that we can take on.
So this particular issue, do we have any takers?
I would leave it unassigned for now in, if we don't have sort of a clear prioritization or takers just yet. And then hopefully we can circle back to it later. If someone at, Hero decides to take it on, we'll just update it afterwards.
It's something you could probably also source to the community as well. I think that the config parser is somewhat self-contained.
I would say help wanted. I don't know if it's a good first issue.
Anyway. Help. All righty. Okay, so this was a fun thing we discovered this last reward cycle. It turns out if there's an odd number of reward slots, that last reward slot is not going to get rewarded. The reason for this is that the code path in which we process leader block commits will wholesale reject any leader block commit that has one auto filled in burn address. Reason for that is because there's a code path that determines which burn address to use, the testnet or the mainnet burn address, and it's always generating the testnet burn address. So our testing never caught this because, we're always using a testnet address, but come mainnet, turns out we get this helpful error message saying that, hey, I was looking for the testnet burn address. I'm sorry, the mainnet burn address, and I got the testnet burn address. Therefore, this block commit is invalid. So, okay, but let me qualify. The recipient, the POX recipient is going to get paid, but the miner is not going to be able to produce a block. So if miners wisen up to this, they're just not going to mine in this block. Well, something that we can't change because it's consensus critical code path, we can just fix it in 2.1. Maybe in the interim, we should make sure that burn chain is mainnet, this method. We should just delete this. It's buggy and it's on a consensus critical code path. We should just replace its use. It's only used in one place and it's in the leader block commit code here. And we should just replace it with false and just add a to do in the code saying this is just compatibility. It shouldn't be false. It should be whether or not the code is running in mainnet or testnet mode, but we just didn't notice this. Fix it in August. I think I have a PR open for this right here. This isn't, oh, we already merged this. Never mind. Cool, we're done. Possible failure to propagate mind block and subsequent flash block. I think we talked about this last week. There weren't that many issues this week, surprisingly. I think this one right here.
Don't jinx us.
What's up?
Do not jinx us.
Aha! Yes. It's quiet, too quiet. Yeah, look at that. Everything we talked about last week. Cool, we're done early. Discussion items. I just want to bring to y'all's attention that SIP 10, which is the fungible token standard, is now in activation in progress status. This is the penultimate status before ratification. The only thing we're doing now is just waiting for people to start using it. So if you look at the Chain Explorer and you can see at least 3 separate smart contracts that implement SIP 10, then we can declare SIP 10 as ratified. So that's awesome. Great job, Hank. I know that Hank's on this call, but still a great job, Hank. And great job to everyone who looked at this, including Frieger and Pascal and a slew of other community members. Speaking of discussions, this weekend I opened the Ultra Mega Super Stacks 2.1 upgrade thread. I spoke with several people about this over the past couple of weeks, and I tried to put all of the things that we all talked about together into one thread. Please feel free to reply to this or add to this in general. This call is not the appropriate place to talk about all the things that have to happen in 2.1, but this is just like the starting off point where I hope we can talk about this asynchronously for a while. There's generally speaking 4 themes, 4 improvements we can do for 2.1. There's obviously the stacking improvements. There's already issues open for them. I think that there's many ways we could solve these. My main concern with getting this fixed is also to make sure that we do so in an incentive compatible way, meaning that whatever solution we have is compatible with honest stacking. So stack whenever you want, however much you want, update your bid whenever you want. As long as you can do all that at any point in time so that miners can't screw with it, or there's no advantage to be had by waiting to the last minute to stack, then I think that we can, then I'll be happy with this. There shouldn't be a way to game stacking. Other themes, one thing that I spoke with Aaron about, for example, and we'd also spoken about in the architecture meeting, are better ways to do in-band upgrades to the system. The system is already pretty amenable to doing all kinds of soft forks for doing bug fixes or for doing behavior changes, but there's a couple things we could do a bit better. The 3 things I wrote down here are, it should be possible to basically vote for a exit at block height, kind of like how we had back in the testnet days. Because if we can have a way to vote for that, then what we really have here is a way for miners and users to vote for Stacks 2.2, should a Stacks 2.2 ever be necessary. This is way more legitimate, I think, than trying to set up some sort of, off the books, off chain, kind of obscure, opaque, hey, let's upgrade the network at this date, which is something that I think we can do better at by making sure that there's a falsifiable opt-in way to vote for upgrades. Shouldn't be too bad to do. We already have most of the mechanism in place. We just need a way to expose it in Clarity. Similar, I think we can also add a way to vote for the POX sunset date. Like, do we want to move it sooner? Do we want to push it back? We already have a way to make it sooner by voting to disable POX each reward cycle, but we could also make it so that miners and users, more specifically users, because miners aren't really incentivized, to be honest here, have a way for them to vote to extend it if it turns out to be more successful than originally anticipated. The most ambitious thing here that I think maybe warrants a lot more engineering discussion is there a way to vote on which smart contract in the system is the POX smart contract? Because if we can do this, then we can just de-risk the need for any sort of breaking changes in the future to change stacking behavior. Like, we can just make it so miners and users can say, hey, we're going to change the rules of POX by voting that this new contract over here is the true POX contract, and we'll just follow that for doing the lockup procedure. That way we don't have to have this conversation over and over again. We can just do it all on chain. Third theme is better clarity APIs. Bunch of things here are basically related to looking at ways to make it easier to validate Bitcoin transactions. The thing that we really should do before we try to implement this as a SIP is see how strong Clarity is at building something like a Merkle proof verifier. And whether or not we're missing anything from Clarity that would make that really hard to do. Because if we can do Merkle proof verification, then we can verify that a particular Bitcoin transaction happened on the Bitcoin chain. And that would allow you to do Clarity code that executes conditioned on whether or not a particular Bitcoin transaction happened. in related vein, one thing we could be doing in Clarity that we're not doing now is exposing information about the state of POX, like what Bitcoin addresses will be paid in this reward cycle, how much have they been paid already if they haven't been paid yet, stuff of that nature. Because that in turn, you can turn around and turn that into derivative contracts, like seeing, like determining who owns a particular reward slot. Perhaps there's a way to update the POX reward address in band, like things of that nature. But again, general theme, better Clarity APIs. And the final theme, reliability improvements, which is basically the grab bag catch-all of all of the consensus critical bugs we've discovered in the past month and a half of operation. We'll fix the mean of min and median bug that we discovered early on with sortitions. We'll fix the better fault tolerance for flash blocks in the prepare phase so that we don't find ourselves losing the F times W metric just because there were a lot of flash blocks. Something that scares me that could happen, but is unlikely to happen, but we can still, make the system more robust for. Anyway, those are the four main themes. I'm happy to spend the remainder of the call talking about these things if you'd like, because we have a lot of time. But also feel free to add any extra things that you'd like to see done in 2.1. Embellish on these, push back on these, whatever. It's all open. It's in the SIPSGov, in the StacksGov repo. Anyone is welcome to contribute. Questions?
Just a quick question on my end. What about SIP 11? Because you were looking to push that one through or kind of move that one along. Have we seen any progress on that as well?
Not really in terms of ratification process. I would love to move that along just because it's good to have a game plan in place in case poop hits the fan again. I think right now I'm waiting for Aaron and Ludo to take a look at it. And one thing that I hope we can gets in place sooner rather than later, it's not an issue for this yet because I think it's too underspecified, is something called a soft fork kit. Like, what are the basic mechanisms that have to exist in the Stacks blockchain that would allow us to execute a soft fork that fixed a catastrophic problem? Because I don't want to have to write that code when the catastrophe happens. I'd rather have that ready to go so I can just make the fix happen and then let miners and users vote on it. Maybe that could be a criteria for ratification for SIP 11, for example.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if I responded with this on the SIP 11 doc, but I think the last time we talked about SIP 11, the takeaway was we wanted to start with like basically a case study of like a catastrophic event. Like there was a bug that allowed like arbitrary transfer of stacks, something along those lines.
I have not done that yet, but I need to do that. It's reminding me. But once that's in place though, do you think you can sign off on it, or are there other things that you want to see? Yeah,
we should be able to.
Sounds good. I will do that today. Dewalker did raise a question here about whether or not we should call it Stacks 2.1 versus 3. I added my hot take to this. My opinion is that the major version in the blockchain represents the master design revision, which I don't think is changing in 2.1 because the fundamentals still are the same. We're just tweaking a few things about the way some of the inner code is working. I think maybe the minor version is a better way to communicate hard forks or network upgrades in this system. 3.0 would become appropriate if we scrapped everything in 2.0 and fundamentally changed the conceptual ways in which the system works. But that's just my opinion. Open to pushback. I'll also point out that a lot of this is how like Ethereum works as well, which is kind of has our closest competitor. Like 2.0 for them is a ground up conceptual redesign of the system. They haven't called each of their hard forks a new major version. It's still 1.x for them. So there is precedent for keeping the conceptual master design revision as the major version.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, I don't know, I feel like we've mostly been talking about it as like an incremental upgrade, even though it's fork.
Yeah.
So maybe what we should then just do is update either the changelog doc or somewhere in the README that, you know, this is how we're using the naming conventions so that people don't get confused by the way that you would normally interpret Semver, especially since now like a lot of people are very closely watching GitHub releases. You know, every time we push a new release, bunch of people get notified and they look to guidance on whether they should upgrade, what would be the impact, what would be the implications. And so we just want to manage those expectations clearly. So indicating the upgrade priority is one part of it. Using version numbers in a way that makes sense and is understandable to everyone is another part of it.
Yeah, maybe an improvement we can do on this front is basically just like adding another digit to Semver. So like we could do like 2.0.0.0, where the last 3 digits are kind of traditional Semver. So like 2.1.0.0 would be the breaking forking change.
What's the third digit in our mind? Would that be like a upgrade version or something?
Yeah, patch version. So
right, but I mean, what is that specific for us though?
I think that it would mean a release in which you do not need to wipe your chain state.
So I do have some thoughts on this. I wasn't prepared to talk about it right now though, but I do kind of want to revisit this discussion. So the way I feel about this is only those that are in, familiar with blockchain communities, developers that already are familiar with blockchains or have been following them from a technical standpoint, they're going to know like, oh, okay, it looks like semantic versioning, but it doesn't operate like semantic versioning. In the sense that like, if you were to go from stacks 2 to stacks 3, a seasoned developer in blockchain would know, oh, it's a complete overhaul. Whereas new developers, people that we're trying to attract, would just think, oh, it's like there's a new feature that's not backwards compatible. I mean, traditionally, if it's a complete overhaul, it's a different system. You would give it a different GitHub project and a different name. It would just be completely different, or you'd start over. So I just I don't know. I kind of feel like a lot of other blockchains don't follow semantic versioning either. Are we deciding? Are we making a decision here to just to follow suit there? Because we do have an opportunity to innovate and not be like the others, so to speak. In this realm. But if that would create a lot of confusion among seasoned and new developers, we clearly don't want to do that either. But our goal is to attract new developers as well that have possibly not operated in blockchains before. So yeah, sorry, I don't really have my thoughts collected on this right now, but yeah, it is an interesting topic to me.
Sorry, Zoom crashed for me just then. I missed the last minute and a half.
Ah, bummer. Are we recording?
We're recording. I can go back and get it. Was there a decision made, just so I can write it down in the doc here?
I mean, no decision really. I don't really have my thoughts collected on this right now. I wasn't really prepared to talk about it. But I feel like the versioning scheme will only be known to seasoned blockchain developers, people coming from Ethereum or other blockchains with smart contracts that know, going from 2.0 to 2.1 is a hard fork. Some new developers would expect going to 3.0 wouldn't be a complete overhaul, but would just be a non-backwards compatible change. Following semantic versioning. So I just feel like if our goal is to attract new developers, they're not going to be expecting, this current versioning scheme when it looks like semantic versioning.
I would push back that very few developers will make or break people based on our versioning scheme either. Like
Yeah, I agree. It's just supposed to lower the entry friction. That's all.
Fair enough. Yeah. I do like the idea. I'm sorry if this is redundant because I got cut off when Aaron was speaking. I do like the idea of the version indicating whether or not the users should do like a immediate upgrade or do like a chain state wipe and restart. Is that a possibility that we could encode that somehow in the Semver?
Yeah, I would say we can do that in like the patch version. Like if it's just a patch change, then no chain state wipe needed. Like you can literally stop and then restart with the patch.
But there's, so in I got this like template written out here, just to try to at least write down where we are right now. Right now, the patch version doesn't indicate whether or not you have to wipe your chain state or not.
Right, that's why I'm saying we add a 4th digit.
Okay, so 3rd digit is chain state version, like the direct reach version, then the 4th one is the patch.
Yeah, but so part of what Charlie was saying is that this is actually a fairly open design space. Like,
yes, it is.
Semver is like not well established as something in the blockchain ecosystem, and so we should put some like careful thought into this, and it's actually an opportunity for us to innovate.
Yeah, I think as long as we're consistent with it, and as long as it's conveying useful information, I think we can't lose. I would also point out that Semver, I think, is also generally new in like the systems engineering community, because I know like Linux doesn't follow Semver. They nominally do, but Linux 5.0 is no different from Linux 4.0, which is no different from Linux 3.0. They just roll over whenever they hit a high enough version. They don't actually. There's nothing really conveyed by the major version. Same with systems like systemd, which is like, or Emacs, which is like every release is a major version.
I mean, a lot of those systems have existed long before semantic versioning, you know, but I see your point.
I would say we should probably move on, continue the rest of the discussion offline if we have to.
This is the last item of discussion though, so just hanging on to it.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that you might have missed when you lost your connection was I don't want to introduce like a majority of confusion to the majority of developers or anything like that. So if it's really widely known that incrementing the major version for a blockchain is a complete overhaul, and a large portion of the community, seasoned and newbies, understand that, then like maybe we should keep it as is. But like what Aaron said before, we don't have to follow what other blockchains are doing. This is an opportunity for us to follow semantic versioning more closely. But I also know that we kind of have been advertising Stacks 2 just about everywhere. So if we were to follow semantic versioning more closely and we say, okay, so the next hard fork, we'll just call it Stacks 3, is that going to create a lot of confusion in the community, because we've been calling it Stacks 2 for a while now. You know, just things that I'm thinking about, but I think I would like to hear other thoughts too. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's maybe more of a question for Jeff, maybe. People who do like the branding or the comms.
So let's move on. I don't think there's that much. I think we're all saying the same thing, which is that we just need to clarify how exactly people should interpret these numbers and how we want to use them going forward, whether or not it happens to match exactly with what Semver says or how it's used. It's incidental. We should just document kind of how we are using our version numbers, just so that people understand it.
Yep. One last question before we're out of discussion here. Do we want, I know that we agreed on like I think it was a monthly release cadence. Should we just target first Tuesday of April for merging all these PRs and declaring a release, or do you want to do it earlier?
I mean, depends how far we are. I feel like every week we talk about, trying to get all the PRs in by like the end of that week. At least that's what my recollection is the last couple of weeks.
Of course.
So,
well, but that's software development for you. It takes as much time as you give it.
So if you're intending a release on, let's say, first.
Let's write down a date here. What's the first Tuesday of April?
First Tuesday of April is probably further out than we want. It's 6th of April. I would very much like to see if we can do.
Do you want to do the last Tuesday first then? Like next Tuesday?
Yeah, so from my perspective, like if we can get all the PRs that we want to get them in by sometime this week, and we publish that as maybe like an RC build that we deploy to our testnet, and then we let it run on the testnet for a couple of days before next Tuesday, then we'll be in a good place to release next Tuesdays. And ideally, we even, maybe we'll let it run for a couple of days on mainnet too, just for testing before we do an official release.
Shoot for release candidate on the 23rd, which is next Tuesday, and then do the full release no later than the following Tuesday after that, giving us a chance to iron out bugs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's like one of these PRs that I think is somewhat time sensitive or could be the microblock mining.
Okay.
Like a bug in microblock mining for miners is going to be really painful.
So we should test the hell out of this PR.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Like, are miners mostly mining without microblocks right now?
Oh yeah, it's been almost like no one's mining with microblocks. Ever since we made that announcement, people have stopped.
I see. Okay, cool. Yeah, I guess it makes sense for them. They're losing money if they if they exhibit this bug.
Yes.
Also, what's our take on reasoning in POX cycles when it comes to releasing a version? Because, like, for instance, we don't want to release a version during the prepare phase. Like if we have a bug in this new release during the prepare phase, we are crashing a POX cycle, which is
very terrible. Yeah, let's never do that if we can help it.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a good point, Ludo. We should probably try to aim to do it either during the proof of burn phase leading up to a prepare phase, or if that's not tenable because there's just too many people stacking, just do it maybe right after a prepare phase, like the beginning of a reward cycle would probably be my second preference. How does that sound to everyone?
Yeah, I like that approach.
Sure thing. So Tuesday in quotes here, like whenever the beginning of the prepare phase, like either whenever the POB window begins or whenever the prepare phase finishes.
Maybe we can try to have the release being ready by the next Tuesday, but only like announce the new software on.
Yeah, that sounds good. I like that. We can announce it only when it's safe for miners to en masse make the change.
I mean, is this something that we want to just so there's one type of change that we don't want to announce too soon, which is maybe like vulnerabilities where we don't want to give people an unfair advantage. But then there is another kind of change where I'm hearing is that we think that some changes are maybe risky for miners to try out, and so we want to do some like our own testing before we do that. I feel like that's something that should be a part of the release process, and we should make it it's part education. So for example, I would push to say we publish the release, maybe we label it a release candidate, and GitHub you can mark things as release, and we include like warnings with that text to say mine at your own risk, use the software at your own risk, this is for testing, this is how we're testing it. But it seems odd that we wouldn't do that just because we're worried that some people will start running it. I mean, we're not going to be able to avoid that.
Yeah, this is more just harm reduction. like obviously we can't be 100% effective at enforcing anything, but we don't have to, throw rocks at the hornet's nest either.
Yeah, and I think we put in market as a pre-release,
Yes.
add warnings. I think
All
we're
the
doing our
caveats.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fair. In fact, I'm kind of doing that right now with Atlas, for example, just trying to make sure that I can't break it before I approve the PR. But maybe that shouldn't be a blocking factor at all. Maybe we can just do a release candidate and let everyone else join in.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds good. Okay, we can do that. Announce release candidates, do releases. Let's aim to do that by 23rd then. That sound good for everyone? I don't hear a no.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Is there anything else to talk about? We have a few minutes left. Guess not. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.